like the start of
Well, the thing, if it takes out, that would be.
But it doesn't complete it.
Right. If you took 70 AD,
which is the end of the daily cycle.
Yeah, let's take 70. If you could pin this on something,
you may not agree. If that was the one that he's
right.
When it's in the Ark of the Covenant, the holiest place. Don't get me wrong, the Lord's there.
Oh yeah.
But the one thing I heard here is he said it's the number of man. Man was made on the 16th.
Right.
The man is sitting in the temple of God. Because this is not the temple.
Right.
Jesus bought it. Okay? It was his temple before, but we took it back, and then Jesus purchased it. Man is sitting as though he were God, which is exactly what Paul is doing. We're trying to be God. I'm using our own mind, our own things, not lining up with history. And it's big, in the temple of God, Yeshua.
Absolutely.
I don't know that you agree.
No, there's that. I believe that has application.
I believe we have a spiritual and a physical.
Yes, exactly. Oh, I totally agree.
Yes. Well, I didn't know.
Yeah, because we allow
So it could have been spiritually started right here. It's 325. But they didn't change it. I mean, that could have been not necessarily.
Right.
But I'm just saying that it made sense.
Right.
Well, so
Because here's our now on the president. That was a question.
but it actually
No, it was over.
we were really worried about that. We were scratching our heads trying to run.
Anything.
Two things there. I've seen video of kids trying to figure it out.
And I know that he's going to do it. It makes so much sense. But we're going to go back to that because it's the truth. It's truth. We've got to go back to this truth to get to the truth.
Right.
When the enemy, which is the women out, comes to the place where they come against the liars. It's called then it's time to step up and say, this is not, you can come against these people. You're not going to get them. That's just what I'm getting from what you're saying.
Yeah, we're gonna build this thing.
Don't let me keep it warm.
Yeah.
Looks like we're getting ready to go again.
Hey, you know the yeah, my mom gets a lot. This is my dad. Probably my dad. You know, I like doing chocolate things that I really like that
was a warning.
The warnings are like, yeah, that's nice. You want to sit there?
No.
I don't know.
All right, Tom. You ready to get started again?
Oh, yeah.
You know why I'm wearing this?
I have a hunch. I know what's going on.
All right.
Hey.
All right. We're going to get started again.
Okay, I can do it.
Yeah.
Where was it again? Muhammad, so we're ready to go.
All right, Tom, why don't you tell the audience why I'm wearing this?
I have to finish what I'm eating. Somebody put some treats out. Do you recognize this young man? NDF. Where did you come in from? You're not Arab from Arab descent, are you?
No, I'm not Arab. I've been there recently. That's where I got this. Pretty typical tourist thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay. So our topic this afternoon, what's the title? America Humbled in Bible Prophecy. That's what we're going to be looking up. First of all, we're going to finish this though, because we had a lot of questions come up on that, so we want to finish that. If that's all right, is that okay?
And so Tom, when we're talking about Bible prophecy, there's lots of conflicts in Bible prophecy, correct?
Conflicts in.
And we're looking at a big one coming up, right?
Right.
There we go. Now,
Is that on? Can you guys hear?
all right.
I can't tell. Am I coming out of there? Okay, great.
So, in this conflict, there's two kind of overarching, and you're going to be talking about this in a little bit, right? There's kind of two overarching, well, I'm looking to the right here, combatants,
right.
Arch enemies, right? You've already talked about one of them, right? That being the papacy.
Yeah.
What's the other one?
Well, when we look out there in the world, some people believe that the greatest threat to the world right now, get this, is global warming. The greatest threat to the planet.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's kind of hot.
Yeah. Yeah. But really, there is one threat that we need to take seriously, and that is 1.5 billion people think three different religions, three different monotheistic religions. It's kind of hard to say that Christianity is a monotheist religion, but it is in a sense. Okay? But we're going to be talking about those three religions, and they are about to clash. They're about to clash. And that's what we're going to be talking about. And that's where the title comes from, is America is going to be humbled in the dust in this conflict. And it doesn't mean they're going to lose, but they're going to lose. And we're going to talk about that.
And I have a question for you just going into that. Now, we've already kind of discussed a remnant coming out of Christianity. Would you believe also that there is a remnant of sisters and the other children of Abraham that are also going to come out of their religion into maybe something that's not quite defined yet, but that remnant?
Right.
And so we're not talking about all Muslims or all Catholics.
Absolutely.
We're talking about the overarching system, right?
Yeah. This war, it'll bring a purification, and it's going to bring a purification that all those are involved. And I believe what God's trying to do, He's actually trying to put the focus back on Him where it belongs. And so out of all the people on the planet, there will be a drawing to him. Now, does that mean that the whole world's going to be converted? No. But he's going to increase the remnant at that time. There's going to be a big influx because people are going to be turning back to the Word. And that's what's going to happen. It's going to come from all different faiths. And this is not about people. This is about ideologies that aren't correct. And that's really the problem, is the ideologies of the West and of the East, which are the two main conflicts that we're going to see here. Okay, so before we start, let's ask for some guidance again, because we need that. Father in heaven, we thank you again for this time, this wonderful time that we can be here and discuss your word, Father. And we wouldn't be so bold to think that we have it all figured out. But Father, we are actually doing what the prophets were doing. They were searching what was coming and the manner of time that it was coming in. Father, we're here dedicating ourselves to you this day and this weekend, and we're asking for your help. And we ask that new understandings will happen this weekend because we're opening your word. And that's where life begins, in your word. And we pray that you be with us now. We ask this in Yeshua's name. Amen. Okay, so you notice I grabbed the eraser? What does that mean?
You're getting racist.
Yeah.
That's pretty logical.
I was hoping you guys were going to give me all the right answers up here, but you didn't. So I'm going to have to start again.
It seems pretty logical to kindergartners that if you pick up that pin, you're going to erase the board.
Okay. Okay. And we're certainly not kindergartners, right? Can you guys see this over here okay? You can't, can you?
A little bit of a glare on it, but it's okay.
Okay. Okay, so we wanted to create a timeline, but I want to know why you put the last great day over there. We're going to start this way. That's the way it's in my brain. So we're going to start the other way, okay? So if you put the last great day at that side, what were you thinking when you wanted it over there? Yeah.
Make days beginning and end.
The 8 days from the beginning and the end. That's interesting. Okay. Yes.
Passover in the month of Nisan was the beginning of months.
Okay. The beginning, a new system. Oh, that's a good clue. Okay, so let's just go like this, just for the sake of time. Okay, so we're going to erase this stuff. You guys already know that those are all going back on there, right? Those are all going back on there because I said we're going to have a whole cycle before it's over. So we will have a starting point here. And somebody was talking about the millennium, so we're going to draw that short. So I'm going to call this the second coming, okay? Second coming will be our ending place, and that would be the beginning of the millennium. Would you all agree with that? Okay. So this is what we're gonna have is our yearly cycle in the last year on this timeline. So we will start with some events that we know of, okay? Some timing that we know of. Now, can somebody give me the first timing that we talked about on the time of the Gentiles? Do you remember how long the time of the Gentiles was? 3.5, 1,260 days, 42 months, okay? So what I'm thinking is we have an event that's going to happen at 1,260 days. Does anyone remember what that was? According to the prophecies, it says in Daniel chapter 7 that the little horn power gets 1,260 days, times and a half, and that's it. And it says in Daniel 7, 25 and 26, it gets 3.5 years And then at a certain time, judgment sits. And it says, they shall take away his dominion. That's verse 26 in chapter 7. They take away his dominion. During the time that the little horn is speaking, we see judgment take place. Okay, that was verse 8. Verse 8, the little horn is speaking. That's the one that gets the 1260. And then it says, judgment sits, and then the little horn is seen again. So what God is trying to tell us, because we can't tell what's going on in heaven, there is a judgment that begins in heaven during the time that this power is in play. Does that make sense? Because in the prophecy, we see 4 animals, and then we see the little horn come on, and it says he's given 12 and a half, or 1260 days. You see in Revelation the same time declare, he's given that much time. In the prophecy, it says, during the time of his reign, we see judgment set, and the books are open. And we see in Revelation 17, which we saw, is God puts it in the hearts of the kings of the earth to destroy the harlot. The harlot gets the 1260. So the harlot's destroyed at 1260. According to the prophecies. If the harlot's destroyed, would there not have had to be a judgment that was meted out? The executive phase of the judgment is when the execution takes place. But there's a phase before that where there's an investigation. If you're gonna execute somebody, surely there would have had to be an investigation on that, right? And that's what the prophecies say. Between verse 8 and 11 are the little horn, time that the little horn is speaking, and then it says right in between that, verse 9 and 11, it says there's a judgment. I just want to make this point really clear because we need to understand that. Yes? Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7. This is all Daniel chapter 7. Because we're trying to see the prophecies in the actual, the prophetic events as they are pertaining to the feast. Okay? So the judgment is a time period that the judgment begins. Okay? Now, if I was to ask you,
Yeah, every time you go past that, you hit down the camera.
Oh, okay. Did they want to see me do this?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's in there.
Okay.
But when you walk past
Thank
that,
you. All right. So there has to be a judgment. It has to be in this time frame. We're just going by the prophecies. We're not going by what we've been told. We're just trying to sort these prophecies out. Okay? So there's a judgment. So which festival would be judgment? We're trying to Yom Kippur. Okay. But actually, judgment, from what I've been able to study, and I'm not sure what you guys have found, but
the books are open at Rosh Hashanah, right?
did you get that? On Rosh Hashanah, there was a saying that people greeted each other. What was it?
I'm not Jewish, so
May your name remain in the book of life. On Rosh Hashanah, it was actually the beginning of the judgment. And the judgment lasted for 10 days. And it closed on the Day of Atonement. You guys are aware of this, right?
yeah.
Okay. On the Day of Atonement, the high priest went into the sanctuary. The only time that he went into the most holy place in the sanctuary with the confessed sins of the house of Israel, and his blood went on the mercy seat, and the sins of Israel that they had committed that whole year were transferred onto the scapegoat. Was led out into the wilderness. So he carried the sins of the house of Israel into the wilderness. And we don't want to get caught up in all of that. But what I'm talking about is the transfer of the sins. Most people don't realize, they don't really study into it. At the altar outside of the sanctuary, that was outside the sanctuary where the lambs were slain and they were burned on the altar. This was a shadow picture of some great events that were going to happen. The sins of the people were actually transferred on, and you guys know this, they were transferred onto the animal. When the person put their hand on the head of the animal, their sins were symbolically transferred onto that animal. And now the animal was deemed as guilty. And the animal had to die, allowing the sinner to go free. It was death. There's no remission of sins without the shedding of blood. This was a demonstration of what Yeshua would come to do. So the burning of the animal on the altar, it said that was a sweet-smelling aroma to God. Sweet-smelling savor. That's always kind of bothered me a little bit. But it's because I didn't understand what it actually symbolized. The burning of the animal that had sin, that contained the sin, was a final picture, if you will, of the destruction of all sin and sinners at the end of time. And that's why on the altar, when the smoke went up, it's what it symbolized to God that was a sweet-smelling savor. It symbolized the final consummation of all sin. We are all going to have fire come down and consume our sin, but we don't want to be in the fire when the sin is becoming consumed. We want the Holy Spirit to come in and consume the sin now, so we don't have to be that sacrifice. Because there is, in the prophecies, it talks about there's a day of the Lord's sacrifice, and that's when the wicked will be destroyed. And that is a sacrifice for him, because those are his children. But because they've held on to sin and they don't want to let it go, he has no choice. And I'm not talking about the scapegoat. No. Sorry. It was let go. Yeah. The scapegoat is a whole nother thing. So we're just explaining this sanctuary. And it's interesting that only those of the household of Israel had any part in this. So the final Day of Atonement, it's only those of Israel that their sins are forgiven. Only of the house of Israel. That's all it was. So what does that tell you? On the final Day of Atonement, unless you're part of the house of Israel, there's no more forgiveness. So that's why we've got a work to do to help people understand that you got to get part of the house of Israel. Because the house of Israel are the only ones that are going to be saved at the end. Now, what about those people in the past that people, you weren't always, No, God has waited at the time of ignorance. But we're coming to a time when all truth is going to be revealed. And everyone will have an opportunity. Nobody's going to be lost because they were sincerely wrong. They're going to be lost because they rejected light. When you reject light by deception, that's the problem. And so what he's asking us to do is help people understand the truth so that they will accept it. But there's a serious, and this speaks to myself, there's a serious problem if we reject light. It leads us to fall prey to deception. Now there's a lie and there's the lie. We should know there's a difference. The lie says that you will not surely die. That's the lie. That's the lie I think it talks about in 2 Thessalonians. It says that God will send them strong delusion that they might believe. In some translations it says a lie, but it's actually the lie. Now let me give you an example of that. The example of that is when Satan was in the garden, of course, she believed the lie. What was the lie? You shall not surely die. The lie, this lie has been perpetrated all the way down. The lie that you go to heaven when you die is that lie. Thou shalt not surely die. It's echoed down through the hallways of time. The lie that somebody said something about mid-trib. Now some of you might not like this, but the lie that there's a rapture is thou shalt not surely die. It's the same thing. There's lies being perpetrated and being brought out that when Yeshua comes back, certain things are going to happen during the time. That is the lie, thou shalt not surely die. It's all the way through, and he's got it through all different religions and all different ideologies, if you will. Thou shalt not surely die. And we want to make sure we're not believing thou shalt not surely die in one form or another. Because it's out there. It's out there in all faith, and we don't want to be caught in that. If there's anything that you're listening to that gives you some kind of second chance, thou shalt not. That's what it is. It says when Yeshua comes, he's coming a second time apart from sin unto salvation. It is over when he comes. There's no second chances after this. That's why Yeshua said the gospel needs to go to all the world, and then the end shall come. Everyone at the end of time is going to know and understand what the true gospel is, and they're going to either accept it or reject it. And when Yeshua comes up, he's going to clean up the mess. That's the way it's played out. Comes the second
Apart from
time.
sin.
That's Hebrews 9, about 26, something like that.
No reference to sin.
Pardon me?
No reference to sin.
Yeah, he's not coming back to deal with sin. He did that 2,000 years ago. And if the world hasn't learned anything for 2,000 years, that's too bad. People say, oh, well, he's not going to come back and destroy everyone. It's time to start reading and see what he did. People just said, what Yeshua, we need to take Yeshua's words for what he said. That's what we're not doing. We're letting man speak for him. He said, as in the time of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man. What happened at the time of Noah? Somebody please tell me. It was gone. Anyone that did not buy into Noah's plan, it's over. And it says that's an example for us. Any teaching that says we got some kind of second chance after he comes back, I'm afraid is a lie. Exactly. That's a lie, and I know a lot of people don't like that, but I can on this and show you clearly in the Word that's what's going to happen. Err on the side of caution. Why could you not be ready when Yeshua comes back? Can you give me one reason why you cannot be ready when he comes back? Ready for him to receive you and take you unto himself, that where he is, there you may be also. That's what he said. He said, I go to prepare a place for you. He was sitting with his disciples at the Last Supper, and it's interesting how this plays out. Judas and the disciples were waiting for him to set up the kingdom. You guys are all aware of that, right? That they echoed that everywhere they went. When are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? It would seem that Judas became a little disheartened, and he created a plan. He created a plan that would force Yeshua into delivering himself and setting himself up as king, and Judas could take all the credit for it. I made him do it. Now this gets really crazy when you start looking at what was going on there. But Yeshua was holding back at the Last Supper. When you follow the narrative through, it's from John 13. It goes through John 13 to John 17. The whole thing is what happened at the Last Supper. All those chapters in the book of John dedicated to one night. 4 chapters. Go through there, and Yeshua starts talking to these guys. He starts saying somebody's going to betray me, all of this kind of stuff. And John and Peter, their eyes meet. And John was sitting close to Yeshua. And Peter looked at him. As soon as Yeshua said that, somebody's going to betray, Peter said, find out who it is. And you can see his lip movement. This is in Scripture. Peter motions to John and he says, find out who it is. Why would Peter do that? Peter would have killed him on the spot. Absolutely. He would have killed him on the spot. And if you don't think he would have, what did he do to the servant of the high priest? Oh, he was ready. He says, I'm ready to go to war with you. Yeah, but are you ready to die for me? You know? Peter was a zealot. And he was ready to go to war. And he was talking about somebody's going to betray me. And it was coming out of the bag. You know the old saying, the cat's coming out of the bag? John says, find out who it is. Yeshua looks over at Judas and he says, whatever you're going to do, you better do it real fast. Because your blood's going to be filling this place if I say another word about it. In the Messiah's mercy, he withheld who it was to give him another opportunity to repent when he left. Because if he would have told those disciples who it was, they would have killed him right then and there. There's no question. These guys were motivated. They gave up everything for their king. And they weren't going to let this happen. And in this, I wanted to get a little bit serious, and one of those covenant curses would be that they would be taken into captivity. A nation would come down. Israel's nations would come. The nations would come down. Babylon, Assyria, and so on. They would come down and lay a bit of a beating on them, a licking, if you will, onto Israel to bring them to their senses. I rather suspect our next major event that Yeshua spoke about is a war that brings America to its knees, and he's going to allow their enemies to come in and lay a licking on us. And I include myself in that. The grandest scale of the Trojan horse has been set in motion. Who would have ever guessed that millions within a couple of years would be able to infiltrate the whole of Europe? We're talking millions and millions of the enemies of the West have just infiltrated every country on the planet. Peacefully. Right? And people think they're stupid? No. They've been warring with the West, the ideology with the West, for many, many years. In fact, this goes back to Abraham and Isaac. And Ishmael, thank you. When Ishmael was going to be sent away, you know the little problem, the little family issue that they had? When Ishmael was going to be sent away, Abraham was worried about his son. And so he's praying, and Sarah just wanted him out. And Hagar, and they were concerned. Abraham was concerned. And God told Abraham, don't worry about this. I got this one. I'm actually going to make Ishmael a great nation. That prophecy has been fulfilled. They are the largest single faith on the planet. Now, when I say that, I'm not combining Christianity as in the Protestant and the Catholic together. That's yet to come to its fullness. Then they will become the dominant one. But the sons of Ishmael have to play into the prophecy somehow, and that's what we're going to look at right now, how they play into it. And I believe what God is doing to America and those that ally with America, because they are rejecting his truth, is he's going to bring them to their knees so that they have another look. And it's just like Yeshua said, you're rich in goods, you're going to look at right now. Now, if I got this on the screen, let's put that there. What have I got up there yet? Darkness. Oh, okay.
We're not gonna finish the board.
Oh, yeah, we've got to finish the board, don't we? But we're not going to right now. We're going to have to stay. If anyone wants a detention, we'll stay after class. Okay. Okay, so I believe we're going to have a showdown in the Middle East between those three things, between Christianity, Judaism, politically correct. Let's cut ourselves a little bit of grace. Everyone knows what I'm talking about when I say Judaism. Okay. Also Christianity. So that's Western ideology and Middle Eastern ideology, which there's no way they're compatible. They are not compatible whatsoever. Allah Akbar, have you ever heard that? What does that mean? Allah is greater. Well, it doesn't, and I hear what you're saying, and to us it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it doesn't really matter because they believe that. That's the problem, is what they believe, because their worldview is what they see and what they believe. They don't look at it from our perspective. So this is what we're dealing with. So we're going to see a clash. And in the prophecies, Yeshua spoke of the time of the end, and the very about it, and then the very first sign or event he spoke about was war. Now, I had a question earlier on that was asked, how do I know that we're at the time of the end? There's a few things that how I know we're at the time of the end. One, there's the restoration of all things happening, that we're all to happen at the time of the end. So that's what's happening in the church, within God's people. And we also can know what's happening out there in the world, because Yeshua said, when you see these things, know that the end is near. And then, as we've been seeing, he's pointing us back to the book of Daniel. So we're going back to the book of Daniel, have a little look at the abomination of desolation. Really come to the bottom of that, but we looked at a few ideas. And I think we're at the place now to jump into a little further back from the abomination of desolation in Daniel chapter 8. So that's what you want to write down, Daniel chapter 8. That's where we're going to go right now. In Daniel chapter 8, it talks about a war between a ram and a he-goat. Interesting. We're going to have a look at this, and we're going to try and pick this apart, and we're going to try to do what it says twice in the chapter itself. It says, Daniel, this vision is for the time of the end, the appointed time of the end. He says, understand, son of man, that this vision refers to the text. Just a minute here. I just need to... okay. Sure. Okay, are we up again? All right. So Daniel is told there, and as we're looking at this a little bit earlier, he comes to him again, Gabriel comes to him again, and he said, look, I'm making known to you what shall happen in the latter nation, for at the appointed time the end shall be. So just like the appointed time when Yeshua came preaching the gospel, he said, the time has been fulfilled. Repent and believe the gospel. So he saw a time being fulfilled, and I believe the time that he said was fulfilled was the 70 times 7. Somebody we were talking about the 70 times 7 here a little bit earlier when the disciples were asking him. Peter said, well, how many times do I need to forgive my brother? 7 times? He says, no, 70 times 7. Well, God never asked him. He hasn't done himself. And really, that's what he did for Israel, because he said, in Daniel chapter 9, he says, 70 weeks, 77s are determined upon your people for the end of sins and reconciliation for iniquity. He was going to forgive Israel another 490 years until the coming of the Messiah. So Yeshua was referring to a prophecy went right over Peter's head, right over his head, missed the whole point. And that's the neat thing about the word is not even the apostles and prophets understood these things, and some of those secrets were kept for later generations. Daniel 8:26 tells us, you are to keep the vision secret because it is about the days in the distant future. Okay, there again, it's days in the distant future. Also in Daniel 11, which is a parallel prophecy, it says, in the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a thing was revealed to me, Daniel, whose name is called Belshazzar, and the thing was true, even a great war. You want to check this out on different translations, very interesting. It was about a great conflict that he was going to have this vision. He said, I understood the thing and had understanding of the vision. Daniel 8, verse 1. Okay, we're going to go through this, and we're going to try and nail this and make it as concise and short and sweet as we can. And just because I want to give you guys some room to study with it as well. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, even unto me Daniel. After that, it appeared to me the first time. And I saw in the vision, and it came to pass that when I saw that I was in Shushan in the palace, which is in province of Elam, and I saw in the vision that I was by the river Elah. So this is a river. If you look in these areas in an ancient map, you'll find out that he was in the province of Iran, the modern day Iran. He was in a palace in Susa. But in vision, he was actually transported to another place, by this river, the Ulai River. Other places it calls it the Ulai Canal, or the widening of the Ulai, which is where the river got quite wide. And when you go into ancient books, it looks like that is the modern day Karun. The Karun, K-A-R-U-N. You can find that river, and it's in southern Iran. It comes down there, and it joins 2 waterways. The Euphrates, as the Euphrates comes down, and the Tigris, they come down, and we're going to have a map up here. I'll show you exactly where that is that it's talking about. So he is transported there in vision. Then it said, he lifted up my eyes, and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram, which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will, and he became great. So what I'm suggesting here is, in the Middle East, this is a prophecy about a power getting very great. And if we can explore that, we can see that this promise to Abraham has made this nation great, this Islamic nation great. And some things going on in the news that we're going to have a little peek at to show you what is actually going on. Daniel verse 5, Daniel chapter 8, verse 5. And as I was considering, a he-goat came from the west on the surface of the face of the whole earth, and he touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. So we see a ram with 2 horns standing by a river in the Middle East at the top of the Persian Gulf. We see this ram here. And now we see, which would be west in this building? I don't know. Let's just, that's west? Okay. It says a goat comes from the west across the surface of the whole earth without touching the ground. Now, which country is always depicted on the west? The United States of America, which is the headquarters of the UN. That's playing into this as well. So we see that at the end of time, if we're doing a what if this prophecy has a fulfillment at the end of time, this power comes across the surface of the whole earth, not just halfway across the Mediterranean, or not just from Spain, but across the surface of the whole earth, and certainly at the end of time. Do you know what that is? That's the whole earth, and we know what it looks like. So there's a power from the west that comes across the surface of the whole earth and doesn't touch the ground. Now, is there a way that a power can come from the west and get to that river without touching the ground. That's the only way it can get there. It has to go by boat, or it has to go by boat, or it has to go by airplane.
Space.
Or space. Okay, or space. Good one. Or space. Launch. Has to be a launch. There's no way to get there. You cannot get there by land. And the prophecy is very, very detailed. So this power comes across, has to get by air, sea, or space. And he came to the ram that had two horns, which I had seen standing before the river, ran at him in the fury of his power. Now, if there was somebody that ran at you in the fury of their power, do you think that they're flipping out, or they just had something that they had to deal with you? If somebody came at you and ran at you with furious power, what would you have had to do to make that happen?
I could run, turn sideways, or...
You might want to run, but what do you think would have brought that on? Like, why would somebody do that to you?
Hurt them, you tick them off.
Oh, you ticked them off. Right. You ticked them off. Yeah, we actually saw a little preview. Do you guys remember 9/11? We saw a little preview. We saw a little preview of what happens to the goat when it gets ticked off. Yeah, it was called Desert Storm. And they went in there, and do you know that they landed pretty much at the exact spot where the U-line meets the tire. That's the center of attraction. We're going to see this here. This was a preview, if you will, as to the big one. Because the big one's coming, there's going to be a provocation that's going to bring this on. And I saw him come close to the ram, and he was moved with choler or rage against the ram. He smote the ram, brake his two horns, and there was no power in the ram to withstand him stand before him. But he cast him down to the ground and stamped on him, and there was none that could deliver the ram from his power. Now, let's get a picture here. We've got an event where power comes from the west across the whole earth, and somehow this ram has kicked them off. Can you think of any kind of power that would originate in the Middle East that might be planning an attack on the west that could kick them off to where they would pull out all the stops? And they wouldn't just say every option's on the table, but they would pick one and go for it? I rather suspect that Mecca and Medina, by the time this is over, will be as flat as what we're looking at out there. You see, Islam is pushing. They're pushing west, they're pushing north, and they're pushing south. They're not pushing east right now because there's trouble east, and they don't want to push east. They don't want to push east, but they're going to push east because the worldview of Islam is that they are going to rule the world. And Colonel Gaddafi, you guys have heard of him, right? Colonel Gaddafi. He used to be a bit of a terrorist himself. He's done a few things that weren't too good. But he sort of pulled back in his old age. He got a little wise, and he said, they asked him, well, why did you just, back off? He said, we don't have to terrorize the world. We're going to take over by population. So he surrendered himself to Islam taking over in population. Do you know that the way the population growth is in the Western world, within about 20 or 30 years, they will rule? Pardon me?
What happened to Gaddafi?
And what happened to Gaddafi? Well, that wasn't too good. But who took him out?
NATO.
Pardon me?
NATO.
NATO. Okay, good. So we see that the Islamic nations are actually on the move. They have the same mandate that Christianity does. Christianity's mandate is go into all the world and make disciples of all nations, and I will be with you. And when I come, we'll pick up the fruit of your labor. Islam has kind of the same mandate. They believe that the whole world will become Islam. If you don't surrender, because that's what Muslim means, it means submission to Allah. If you don't convert to Islam and become a Muslim, they will have the job of killing you. You see, ISIS actually, they're not really a renegade Islamic force. They just take the Quran seriously. That's all. When push comes to shove, and the mullahs, the religious leaders, are all in one accord, which they're getting there. They are getting there. They are moving in that direction. When they feel that they have everything in place, they're going to make their move. They're going to make their move on the West. Because the West is the great Satan, and the United States is the great Satan, and Israel is the little Satan. And in the Quran, it says they're going to kill the Jews, they're going to kill the Christians, and then they're going to kill anyone else that doesn't submit to Allah. That's the game plan. I believe there are people in your government that know that, but they can't say that. And that's why they're trying to protect your borders. This whole thing in Mexico, it's actually bigger than Mexico. It's this. It's about this. I don't know if they know what's going on, but I made sure I sent one of my books to Donald Trump. I actually got a reply. It wasn't handwritten, but I got a reply. Him and Melania thanked me for the book, the gift, for the White House. Yeah, I don't know if he wrote it or if he read it.
It'll end up in a box in the president's library, at least.
Yeah. Anyways, all the information is in here. And like I say, I want every family to go home with one of these books, whether you can afford one or not, and it's just a donation basis. So just take one home. We sent this to some of the thought leaders in America, and on the pages that Mr. President Trump, we made sure we highlighted those pages and we put that in the note at the front of the book. You may want to take a look at page such and such and such.
Sticky notes on it.
Yeah, sticky notes. So we gave some personal books to him. I believe with all my heart, he's a man that's been put into place, the same place that Nebuchadnezzar found himself in. It's no coincidence that his son-in-law is an Orthodox Jew. He's got people in his cabinet that are Sabbath people, that are very close acquaintances of him.
He Bible studies every week.
And Bible studies every week. I believe God set him in a place. The one thing that I'm concerned about, and I don't know if Donald would do this or not, and I hope he doesn't, but if he makes America greater than it is today, if he stands up like Nebuchadnezzar and he says, look at this great America that I have built, that will be the beginning of his end. And he could do that. He could do that. He's probably got more power than anyone this planet has ever seen at his fingertips. Can you imagine walking that line? Oh my goodness. I think that's why Paul said you need to pray for your leaders.
That's what everybody's talking bad about him.
Oh my goodness, in Canada it's horrible. I just shudder. These people have no idea the decisions that these guys are going to be in very, very soon. And so he's trying to protect the country. He's trying to keep nationalism because they know the one world order is being pushed by these nations, especially these third world nations. They have a law, I don't know if it's actually enforced yet or it's on the books in the UN, that anyone of any nation can choose anywhere on the planet and they can live there. Now what's that going to do? You don't suppose Islam would take advantage of that, do you? Oh my goodness. I hope they don't get that one through. But this is what's going on, and they're getting their people in place. And I'm not saying, and I want to say, I'm not saying that every Islamic person has evil thoughts. It's an ideology that we need to deal with. And I believe there are people in the Muslim faith that will be saved by the God of Israel. There's no question. They will convert to the God of Israel. And people are doing it all the time, right now.
you to the Lord, or they'll bring you to the sword.
Oh. Yes.
Based upon what you said about the Muslims, that you believe there are going to be some of them that aren't going to be God, I believe that those are actually like the children too, because the children, like, they're not sent on evil. So I think they will be one in the Muslim group that will be saved by God too.
Right.
Even if they never get to know the truth in their lifetime.
Right.
Don't forget our viewers.
Yeah, so it's bringing out the point that she believed that the Muslim children, those that know, that the nicest thing that I've reserved myself to, I'm going to leave all judgment to him. Amen.
That's true.
I don't need to worry about it. Whatever happens is going to be in his hands, and I will accept it. And yeah, he will take care of all those little details and so on. But everyone of all faiths will be saved, because the gospel is going to go to all the world, and that includes the Muslims, it includes even the Catholics. Oh my. I can say that because I was a Catholic. And I can, you know how you make jokes about your own religion? I was a Catholic. I make a joke about that. All on my father's side are all Catholics. And I believe that my father was in the kingdom, and he was a Catholic, never converted. But I saw a change at the end of that man's life that led me to believe that he accepted the Messiah as his Savior. And that, yes.
There's a movement of Messianic Jews to Christ. You're familiar?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay. There's a movement of Messianic Muslims, Isa Muslims they call them, and they have the meeting home called Isa Jamaats, Isa groups.
Right.
And I've been working with people who around the world. We have a network we've been working with for years, and there are millions of Muslims who are converting.
Right.
Okay. So we need to be careful that we don't choose sides in this war between the West.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. We are citizens of heaven.
Right.
We are a church without borders. We go beyond borders. We
Right.
are all the world.
Yeah.
We want to reach Muslims, we want to reach Jews, we want to reach Christians, we want to reach Catholics, we want to reach Buddhists, we want to reach secular people. We don't, none of those, Satan wants you to get angry at Muslim people, just like a lot of other Christians that teaching hate. Be careful, don't fall.
Right. Yeah, good comment. Comment is, we don't want to be angry with people groups. Of course not. We don't want to be angry with people groups. And what we're doing here is we're not talking about people. We're talking about ideologies. And I want to emphasize that. This is not about people. It's people that adhere strictly to an ideology.
We also need to hold comments because of the video.
Okay, yeah, good point. Okay, so exactly. What we're looking at here is we're looking at information, and we're dealing the information. And I'm trying to make some sense out of it. Why the borders around this country are trying to be protected, because the idea is if you let in 100, even if 15 are suspect, it may be a good idea because you can't really vet the 15 out. It may be safer to build that wall. It might be safe to build that wall. So that's what's going on, and it's hard to walk that line. It must be really hard to walk that line and be merciful and be gracious all the way along. And so that's what we're seeing. But the fact of the matter is, Bible prophecy has revealed that at the time of the end, Yeshua told us to go to Daniel, and the very first thing that happens in Daniel 8 vision that carries the abomination of desolation, the very first thing is war. So he's revealing that at the time of the end, there's a great war that takes in the whole world, and in Luke it tells us the end will not come immediately. It says everyone will be terrified of this war, and the end will not come immediately. There's been no, this one will terrify everyone. Now, I asked someone earlier, what would happen if you had 3 9/11 events in the United States? At one time, on one day, Would not be good, would it? What would happen if you had 5 9/11 events on one day? What would happen if you had 10 9/11? They would be airplanes. You know how fast that would happen? There would be no conversation. There would be no conversation. It would be done. Because actually the people in the CIA, they're watching this very closely. You know, back in the time of the Shah of Iran, did you ever see the movie called Argo? Anyone ever watch that movie? I don't want to promote Hollywood.
So there's also the incident in the Middle East that happens to be brewing right now is Turkey.
Oh my goodness, yeah, we're going to talk about that. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. The things have been setting up right now, but this movie is very interesting. This Argo, it's when the hostage was taken back in 1979 with the Ayatollah Khomeini. Remember when the radical Islam took over in Iran, and they wanted the Shah of Iran back. He had gone into exile and he ended up dying of cancer, I believe. But they wanted him back because they wanted to execute him for all the money that he stole from the common people. The guy lived, no kidding, he lived like a pig. He would get on a Concorde and fly to Paris for lunch with his wife and fly back. It's amazing. These guys, their lifestyle is completely different. And the Muslims got onto this. The real, true-hearted Muslims got onto this and said, this is over. This guy doesn't do this anymore. That in the movie, there's a real line in there that one of the fellows says, what's going on? Nobody saw this coming? They absolutely saw it coming, but there was nothing they could do about it. We have the same situation right now brewing in Saudi Arabia. Are you guys aware of what's going on in Saudi Arabia? Well, let me explain. A couple months ago, there was a reporter. I believe he was New York Times. Anyone? Khashoggi. He went to Turkey to get a license so that he could get married to his fiancée. His fiancée took him there, and he went in the Saudi Arabian consulate there to get his permit to do this, and he never came out. Well, actually, he did come out, but he was inside body bags, all cut up into little pieces. I'm sorry, I shouldn't maybe have said that, but that's the reality of it. That's what happened. There was, I think, 15 guys in the Saudi consulate that were waiting for him because he made an appointment to go to get this permit, and he had been sort of exposing some of the things in the Saudi royal government, in the princes and so on. And it's found out without a question, the whole world knows, that the Prince bin Salman, Mohammed bin Salman, he's the royal crown prince, the one to take over, he actually ordered the execution of this guy. And the whole world knows this. It's all exposed. And the problem is the United States government is in bed, as it were, with the Saudi royal family. So when you got friends like this, it starts to get a little serious when the whole world's looking at you. The Saudi royal family is setting themselves up for a slaughter. The same thing that happened in Iran is going to happen in Saudi Arabia. The Saudi Arabian government now is becoming under pressure. And you can go on YouTube and verify this because everything you see on YouTube is correct, right? And true. But once you start knowing what's going on in the prophecies, you can actually verify it by the news. This is why you're going to be able to watch the news after seeing this. You're going to be able to watch the news and see what's going on in the Middle East with Israel and everything. You're going to know, oh, this is where this is heading. I already know in advance. We already know in advance. We're going to look at some more of these texts and see what's going on. But Saudi Arabia is at a tipping point right now. Islam, the bulk of Islam is getting fed up with Saudi Arabia. When the Turkish Ottoman Empire owned rights or looked after the rights of Mecca and Medina. It was under the leadership of the Ottoman Empire. When Saudi Arabia became a nation early in the 1900s, through this king that came in, the House of Saud, that's why Saudi Arabia. When they came in, they took control of Mecca and Medina, and you had to come in as a foreigner now into Saudi Arabia, into Mecca and Medina. But in the scheme of things, that should not be so. That area should be open to all Muslims, and all Muslims can come in. But Saudi royal family now has total control over it. And because of the direction of the Saudi government, and that they're working with the West, and they're working with Israel, and they're not helping in the Palestinian cause, the Saudi royal princes are only interested in how much money and gold they can get in their pockets. And you can verify all of this. You look at what they drive, and you look at what they fly, and you look at their boats. The boats, oh my goodness, Mohammed bin Salman just purchased a boat, a yacht, $500 million yacht. Yeah, this is pretty sweet. And the Muslims that are starving, they're seeing this, and they're seeing a huge double standard here. They're seeing a westernization, a watering down, a secularization to the Muslim faith, and they're going to put a stop to it. If the Saudi royal family, this is the next event, if the Saudi royal family doesn't get it straight and start pulling the rope, as it were, the Saudi and the Islamic rope, and gets disconnected from the West, it's over. It's over for the princes in Saudi Arabia. And a more fundamentalist government will come in, and we're going to see how this plays out in the prophecies. In Daniel chapter 10, verse 14, it says, "Now I come to make thee understand what shall befall thy people in the latter days or the last days, for the vision is yet for the appointed time." And we've looked at some of these already, from the time of the daily sacrifice, the abomination of desolation. Here again, parallel prophecy. So we need to look at this prophecy as well, Daniel chapter 11. The ram that we're talking about in Daniel 8, it says it has two horns. I'm proposing that the ram is Islam as a whole, and the two horns it tells us are the kings of Media and Persia. Now in Bible prophecy, you can substantiate this, check it out. The Bible prophecy, beasts are greater areas, and the kings are depicted as horns. They're the ones that are directing traffic, if you will. So the kings of Media and Persia are the leading kingdoms of the whole of Islam. Now, if you look at a map, I don't have a map of this, but if you look at a map, just punch it in, Islamic nations, you're going to find out that they've spread themselves all over the globe. Most of northern Africa is all Islamic nations, with a little bit dispersed in amongst that. All over the Middle East is Islamic, and also over into Malaysia and Indonesia. Indonesia is the largest populated Islamic nation on the planet. You wouldn't think of that. I believe it's 250 million Muslims live in Malaysia. It's immense. So when you look at this, you can see they've spread themselves out, and they're not just a certain skin color. And again, this is about people that are adherent to an ideology. This is what the Bible's revealed. These people that take this ideology serious will come against the West because they believe they're infidels. That's the way their book reads. That's the way our book reads. It's revealing a conflict that's unlike any other. In Daniel's day, the kings of Media and Persia encompassed all of the Middle East. This is at the height of the Medo-Persian Empire in Daniel's day. Now, God in the prophecies couldn't say that Daniel, the kings of Iran and Iraq and Syria and so on are going to have a war, because that would make no sense. So God said the kings of Media and Persia. Now, if this vision is for the time of the end, This should make some sense. Well, it kind of does, because if we look at those borders around here, we can see Turkey up the top left, and we can see it spans all the way across the bottom of the Russian states, the Kazakhstans, Uzbekistans, and so on, all across there, which are predominantly Muslim, over to Afghanistan on the east side, bottom right at the top of India, which is Pakistan, and Islamic influence into India as well, and it goes all the way across across the Persian Gulf. He takes the two rivers, because they don't have a longitude and latitude. He takes two rivers and he brings them together where they meet, and that's the geographical fix for the center of the division. Now, when we look at that, that takes us right into the center of the area that we're talking about. So Daniel was transported from the palace to the center of the vision, and he saw the whole vision. And it said that he was sick for 3 weeks because it was such a great conflict. He said, I didn't understand this. This, I believe, what Daniel was seeing is the vision, the great war that Yeshua talked about, that everyone on the planet would fear that the end has come. This is how severe this is going to get. Is that it's going to seem like the end is going to come, but we know it's not, because he said the end's not going to come immediately. Now, the problem that we have here right now is we have what's called the Strait of Hormuz, which is in the Persian Gulf. It's a little waterway where 1/3 of the world's oil supply goes through every day. 1/3. If that little waterway is cut off, business as usual will be no longer. It won't be happening any longer. You guys are probably aware that your government is trying to figure out how they can take out the government of Iran, because they're the ones that cause a lot of problems. But Iran has said that if you do anything to us, we will cut off this water supply, or this oil supply. And they can't do it. They buzz around in their boats and they taunt the U.S. fleets, and there's nothing they can do about it. There's nothing they can do, because the threat is that they can shut this down. And now Iran is actually building bridges in the Middle East. And you mentioned Turkey. Turkey, the president of Turkey is President Erdogan, and he is a fundamentalist Muslim. And he is trying to raise the Ottoman Empire. And if you do some homework, you're gonna find out what he's up to. Is he's trying to bring in a caliph, or a caliphate. And he wants the Ottoman Empire to rule again. By the year 2022, his plan is to unite the whole Arab world under one head. They will be one state. This is what it says in the prophecy, that the ram is going to start to move. Islam will start to work as one. In the prophecy, it tells us in Daniel chapter 11, it says 3 more kings will arise in Persia. This is the area that we're talking about here. The Persians, the kings of Media and Persia. 3 more kings will arise in Persia. And it says the 4th is far richer and far greater than them all. Now I'll give you a guess which king that is. Saudi Arabia. They have weapons in the last 30 years than any other country on the planet. Canada just cut a deal with them for the tune of $15 billion. We're going to sell them a bunch of armored vehicles, personnel carriers. Forget how many it is, and we're going to sell them some other things that have some 100mm cannons on. That sounds like a good idea, doesn't it? Oh my goodness. That is nothing to what your government's doing. They are selling weapons to the Saudis because they made an agreement with the Saudis that if we can come in and we can develop your oil, we can bring our businesses in, and they can make tons and tons and tons of money, all in US dollars, and you guys, we will provide security for you, you pay us, and we will provide for security. And Saudi Arabia has been buying the weapons that are built in the United States for 25 years, and they are loaded to the gunnels with ammunition. With what we know in Bible prophecy and experience, something that we're going to be afraid of. Yeah.
I think in Zechariah, I hear some about 2/3 of Israel.
Oh, book of some prophecies in the book of Zechariah. Yeah, definitely. There's some really interesting things in Zechariah. We're just going to focus, not jump around too much. We're just going to focus here for now on Daniel, because Daniel has kind of a complete picture, not so that you're talking about details now. So we're trying to get a bigger.
I'm wondering if that might be part of why the West comes against Islam. Who is destroying Israel?
Right. Exactly. So let's play it, shall we? What do you think the fundamental Islam would do to provoke the ire of the West? Attack Israel. Yes, attack Israel. You see, there's an idea in Islam, if you die and you're a martyr doing it, then you're going to get rewarded for that. We're dealing with an ideology that teaches people, and I'm not saying all of them, and I really respect your comment there, is we're not dealing with all of them, but we're dealing with an ideology that says I can strap bombs on my person and that's okay. And I can blow myself up as long as I take a few others with me. That's the ideology that we're talking about. When we have people teaching people that, and they believe that, it's not a problem for Islam to do something in Jerusalem and still have martyrs that die in the combat that are Islamic, because they're dying for the cause of Allah. So it's really not a problem for them to have some, what do they call that? Friendly fire? It's really not a problem, because those guys it's all for the greater cause. Yeah, collateral damage, all for the greater cause. I suspect that Israel is going to have something to do with it. There's either going to be a move on Israel, and there will also at the same time be a move on the United States. From what I've read, and of course some of this is conspiracy generated, but from what I've read, I've seen things that would indicate that the Islamic powers, the fundamentalists, have been doing this for a long time, long before 9/11, long before all the restrictions were set in place. So they've got things over here that may not go too well for us, things like chemical weapons, biological weapons, and so on, already on the soil. And all they need is the go, and let go. So I'm talking the idea of 3 9/11s. I'm not talking about airplanes necessarily. I'm talking about, just going past the water system and we throw this in here and all of a sudden you have 1 million people dead. That's the kind of thing that we're talking about. That's the kind of thing that would send these people over here really quick without touching the ground, without any conversation. This is it. This is over. You guys have extended your stay too long, and we can't have to, because really, when it comes right down to it, when you look at the ideologies, is we're heading towards a one world religion that we all have to recognize as supreme. And I believe that's Christianity. I really believe that's Christianity. But it's a fallen Christianity. And Islam and Christianity, I don't believe, can exist together. There's been, Chrislam. Have you heard of Chrislam? That's an attempt, but it's not going to fly. It's not going to fly. It's an attempt to make compromises so that we can all be of the same house. But that's not. The mullahs in Iran and Pakistan and even Saudi Arabia, for that matter, they're not going to go for this. They're not going to go for this. Their plan is to take over the world. And this is what we see here. We're seeing the Islamic nations. Again, these are the kings of Media and Persia. We're seeing a move by the Media, a concerted move by the kings of Media and Persia. Turkey now is is allying itself with other nations. Turkey is actually foremost in demonstrating that Saudi Arabia is in complete rebellion to Islam. And Turkey is a very well-respected country. It's Sunni Muslim. They have reached hands. They have reached their hands across to Iran. And this is when it starts to get very interesting, because when you reach from Turkey to Iran, you've just bordered Syria and Iraq and Iran. There's a bridge all the way across. And now you're taking in, now there's talks with the Taliban, made peace with the Taliban. Can you imagine making peace with the Taliban? My goodness. Yeah, well, we've done that. And Iran now is working with the Taliban in Afghanistan. And what do you suppose they're telling them? The leader in Iran was telling the Pakistani government that the West is the problem. And it's all in the news. When you know what news to look for, you can find it all. They are actually joining forces because they know if Islam is going to rule the world, they're going to have to mend their ways between them. And this is what's going to happen. The same thing that's happening in Christendom with Catholicism and Protestantism, they're coming together. The same thing's happening in Islam. They're bridging that gulf because they have the same common enemy. They have the same common enemy.
United we stand.
United we stand. The problem with Israel is it says when you see Israel surrounded by, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, know that it's good. When the enemies of Israel become united, it's time to wake up. And we can see this happening right now. The very next sign that I'm looking at, and I can't believe how fast this is happening, the very next sign that I'm looking at is I'm watching Saudi Arabia, because when Saudi Arabia flips, it says when Saudi Arabia flips, the whole Islamic thing goes. And they all unite. It's a call against the realm of Greece. Can you just hang on to it? Okay. Now we want to look at something here. A couple maps here. I'm just going to put all these together so you can see what we're dealing with here. In Islam, the kings of Media and Persia, you can see it's exactly the same area. So at the end of time, if this vision's for the end of time, it's a perfectly laid out vision. At the end of time, comes against the kings of Media and Persia, which are the ruling authority for Islam. And then it tells us about this goat comes from the west. In Daniel 8:21, it says the rough goat, he's the king of Grecia, the west. And the great horn between his eyes is the first king. The king of Grecia, when you look at a map of the world, the Grecian Empire was the beginning of the West. That's where Western civilization takes off. That's its birthplace, really, from the West, and it goes forward. So in Daniel's day, it's the king of Grecia, or the Western nations. That's where the border is. Now, I don't know if any of you served in the military. I rather suspect you have. When you are told that you're going to go to combat, generally you don't land behind enemy lines, unless you're a spy or something like that. You get as close as you can to the battle without crossing the line. Has anyone experienced that? That's the way they do it. They get as close as they can. If you look at Greece on a map, that Greece is the last safe haven, if you will, to where you get to the Middle East. It's the last safe haven that you get to when you get to the Middle East. I rather suspect that when Daniel saw Greece in the time of the end, there was more boots on the ground than it could actually handle. I rather suspect that all air bases in Greece will be full of Western forces, because this battle is going to take a lot of energy, and Greece is going to play a major, major role. There just happens to be a couple of bases. Great Britain has a base, the United States has a base on Greece, And it talks about later on, it talks in Daniel chapter 11, the ships will come from Cyprus. Look in the margin there, it says western lands. Very interesting. It's Greece, it takes in the west, the powers of the west. It's the dividing line between the powers of the east and the powers of the west. And I think I'm just about there for time. We're gonna finish up on this slide here. So we can see here that Daniel was taken to where the converge of these two rivers came together, and that's the center stage for where this vision is going to take place. So now what do we do? What do we do with this information? Number one, I wouldn't buy it from blind and sinker if I was you. Do some homework and look at these prophecies and just see what they say, see if it makes any sense. But the other thing you want to do is watch the news and see if these things are lining up with what's going on. We've been... Nope.
Finished talking. I'm sorry if I interrupted.
That's all right. I'm not quite finished, but I'm getting very close.
Okay.
You want me just to finish, or?
Well, don't trust CNN because CNN twists stories. Like,
all right.
They twist stories and they don't report certain things on their thing. In certain news.
Okay.
They twist up stories and they're very liberal.
That's a great point you brought out. I want to come back to that point. Don't let me forget. Yes.
What are the spaces in between there? How do they get across?
I'm sorry, the spaces.
In between the red line, how do they get across?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a river. I've just drawn that in and it didn't go over top of it. So that's the two rivers. That's the Tigris that it mentions in Daniel chapter 11, where Daniel saw this great war, this great conflict, and which made him sick. And in Daniel chapter 8, the Uli, which is what looks to be the modern day Turin. Any searching that I've been able to find, that seems to be what's indicated on that. Now, young lady just mentioned the news. This is where it becomes important. This is what you want to do, is you're going to be able, with this information, you're going to be able to watch the news that's actually important. Everything else you'll be able to sift out now. So I would recommend, this is the kind of news I watch. When I see President Erdogan in Turkey and there's a news article on him, I'm reading it. I want to know what he's saying. Saudi Arabia, I'm reading it. I want to know what he's saying. Al Jazeera, you might want to tune into Al Jazeera because that gives the Islamic perspective on what's going on. Because it really doesn't matter what we believe, it's what they believe. That's where the problem is, and you can see what they're thinking. And here again, I want to emphasize, I appreciate the comment, and I have to remind myself of this. This is not about people. This is about information. This is about prophecies. We need to deal with the information and get to where we're okay with it. Because Yeshua said not a hair on your head will be harmed. Even if we die in a conflict, it really doesn't matter anyways. I tell people, you know, from what I've seen coming, if I end up being at ground zero when something hits, I'll sleep through this one. I'm okay with being woken up at the resurrection. I'm okay with that. Ground zero might not be a bad spot to be for that. I can see that you have something to say.
Well, I was thinking before we stop for dinner here, why don't we turn this webcam around and get a shot of the audience for everyone out there?
Sure. I don't know how to operate the cameras.
Well, I'm just going to pick it up and turn it around.
And everyone wave.
So, is everyone? So, why don't we do something here? So, everyone from out of Texas, put your hands in the air. Out of Texas. All right. I know we've got North Carolina and Louisiana and New Mexico and Utah, Missouri. Yeah. Any others?
California.
California back there. Nope. No. Okay. He's just waving. All right.
But there is California back there.
All right. Excellent. Yep. All right. All right. So everyone from Texas, but not Midland, Odessa.
All right, so we got a big Lubbock Fort Davis contingent over there, and Levelland, very close to Lubbock. I know we've got Seminole here, and Abilene. There we go, Abilene, McAllen, Kilgore. Did we have someone from East Texas? There we go, you guys. That's all right. All right, and now everyone from Midland, Odessa, the locals. All right, well, we're pretty outnumbered, aren't we? All right.
Yeah, you better behave.
Yeah, we better behave. No, not likely. All right, well, we'll would like to get a group picture.
That'd be great. Yeah.
So when we stop here, let's all go out on the porch and get a group picture. And then I think I have Melissa and Marshall helping with just kind of get things pulled out for dinner, but we need more than that. Actually, didn't like assign anyone to help out with dishes. So
it's Sabbath. We don't have to do dishes.
We're gonna have to do a couple of dishes.
No, why don't we just get off our paper plates?
So we have some cooking dishes that we've used, so we'll need to get those cleaned up after Sabbath. But so if you would just please be available to jump back there and see what you can do to help out, that'd be great.
Follow up on the same subject we were just discussing.
Yes, sir.
You have a comment, question? Cyrus came from Media Persia.
Yes.
And when you talk about the fall of Babylon, according to the book of Daniel and Herodotus, it happened when he dried up the river Euphrates. And that's the term that is used in Revelation for the fall of Babylon, the code term.
Right.
For those who know their Bibles, to know that Babylon did not fall until the Euphrates was dried up and the soldiers came up under the gates and took the city, the impregnable city. Right?
Apparently.
And Daniel 5 tells us about the story of what happened that night. They were partying that night. Right? And the handwriting on the wall. And so all of that is typology for the last days. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So what have you
That's
thought,
interesting.
Have you thought about that?
Not that specific one, but that's good. I like that's good.
So we might do some more question and answer time or another talk after dinner. But let's go get a big picture, entire group can, and then
So we want to do this
sanctuary.
We want to finish this up.
The replica of the sanctuary is actually unlocked, so we can all take a little walk over there and go check it out.
100%. One more thing I'll just announce, because I don't know if everyone's going to be able to stay for the meeting tonight, and I don't want anyone to think that I'm selling these books, because I'm not actually. I'll give them away. But if you can give us something, that's great. But what I want, the reason why I bring this up now, is I don't know if anyone has to leave and they're not going to stay for supper to be able to get one. I want to make sure every family gets at least one of these. Okay, and please just take one, because we're running short. We went to Kentucky and we did one of these, and we just have some left. But we want to make sure that we can get these. And you can order them, and so if you don't get one, you can get more. EndTimesProphecy.com. And we have a couple other books too. I'll just mention now. This book here,
Say the name. You're not in the camera.
This book here, Reclaiming God's Festivals. This book I wrote so that people could have a starting place. I don't get into all the details. Kind of what my mission is to get people going into a direction, and they can sort it out after. That's not my problem. So this is a real basic peace book. So if you've got somebody that you're just trying to lead into it, it's a real simple book. It's only like 100 pages type of thing, a little over 100 pages, an easy read. And it goes through some of the feasts, say what they were for, how they were fulfilled, and some things like that. Very simple book. This one here, now, do you realize, and I got to make a confession, I've got a history. Do you guys have a history? Are you proud of it? You're proud of it. I got a history, and I'm proud of my history, actually. I've come a long ways. But this book, I first came to a knowledge of the Sabbath through the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Now, a lot of people, it's amazing when I'm in certain circles, a lot of people, when I say that, I'm going to say this on the camera because they need to hear this too. When I say that I first came to the Sabbath through the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and I came to a knowledge of the health regulations and what we should eat and so on, I learned a lot of other things. As soon as I say that, it's like, get away from here. It's like, oh my goodness, did I say something wrong? I don't know why, but I get treated like that in a lot of circles. But anyways, I'm sorry to have to say that because we all have a history. Did anyone come out of Pentecostalism? Did you ever get greeted like that? Yeah, okay, well, we're all in the same boat, right? Anyway, so don't hold it against someone, and I say that, it's really a selfish motive. Don't hold it against me, right? But don't hold it against anyone because God is calling people out of everything that is confusion. So this book here, now I did that all so that I could say what this book is about. This book here is called Restoration of God's Festivals. Okay? This book is like this book. In fact, this book came after this book. This book is this book abbreviated. Are you confused now? You know what? If someone doesn't have certain baggage, you can get the truth across to them a lot easier. But I know some of the things that Seventh-day Adventists have to struggle with to accept the feast. I know them very well because of my background. So I decided, just hang on to your thought. I decided that I wanted to write a book that would help my brothers and sisters in the Seventh-day Adventist Church understand why I have decided to keep the festivals. That's what this book is for. And just recently, I got a note, and I get these notes all the time, but I got one just the other day that said, I got your book, and I read it, and I liked it, and I gave it to somebody at church, and they had been trying to witness to this family member for years. And they gave her this book, and she brought it back the other day, and she says, now I see it. And it's just like, praise the Father. Amen. His word is not going to return void. Sometimes we want to be the one that reaches our family members or whatever, but we're the last one that they're going to listen to. And so sometimes we just got to get it from somewhere else and give it to them and let God deal with it. So that's what I wrote this book for. And in the defense of Seventh-day Adventists, and that's not why I'm here, I just want to straighten the record. They brought me to a knowledge of the sanctuary. They have the sanctuary figured out in a way that I don't see anyone else has it figured out. And very interesting, very interesting. They led me to the sanctuary, to a fuller understanding of the sanctuary, which involves the feast. And I came to the place where I actually grabbed the idea that nothing would happen in the sanctuary unless there was an appointed time. Right from the morning to evening, to the weekly, to the monthly, to the yearly, everything revolved around the festival or the appointed time calendar. All the way through. So if you do away with the appointed times, you actually don't have a sanctuary. It's only full of furniture, not people. You can't have a sanctuary without appointed times. They revolve around the appointed time. So interesting. So I learned a lot, and I still fellowship with them. There's some great people in that church, as there is in all churches. And God has his people all over the place, and we need to reach as many as we can. So let's go and do what we're going to do and have a picture. Is he out there ready to go? Let's go out. We'll see you guys a little bit later. Thank you.
Okay, guys. Watch your head.